Good afternoon, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the City Club of Eugene's January 26, 2024 program, the preview of the 2024 Oregon Legislative Session. My name is Andrew Kalk, and I am City Club's president. We're coming to you from our home at the 5th Street Market in the heart of downtown Eugene, and it's my pleasure to extend a warm welcome to our speakers and to all of you joining us in person, online, and over the radio. For 3 decades, the City Club of Eugene has remained dedicated to its founding mission, to build community vision through open inquiry. In accordance with our mission and our purpose, we hope to connect people throughout our community and across generations, identities, experiences, and perspectives. You are invited this week and every week to join us in this effort, to share your wisdom, to learn something new, and to take active steps to make a difference in this city and region we all love. Of course, we cannot do this work alone, so a special thank you to our Platinum, Community, and Diamond sponsors. The Eugene Area Chamber of Commerce, serving as a catalytic leader in creating a vibrant and diverse economy that drives economic opportunity and well-being. Kaiser Permanente, which exists to provide high-quality, affordable healthcare services and to improve the health of our members and the communities we serve. More information at www.kp.org. The University of Oregon has helped Oregonians question critically, think logically, reason effectively, communicate clearly, act creatively, and live ethically since 1876. Get more information at uoregon.edu. Peace Health has been proud to serve Eugene, Lane County, and beyond as your hometown healthcare partner for more than 80 years. The Peace Health mission is to keep you and your family healthy. Learn more at peacehealth.org. Lane Community College transforms lives through learning. LCC provides comprehensive, accessible, high-quality educational opportunities that promote student success. For more information, visit lanecc.edu. The AARP of Oregon is a trusted and positive force for social change, using the experience and leadership of volunteer members to benefit all Oregonians as we age. More information at states.aarp.org/Oregon. And thank you to the City of Eugene and to Lane County for their support as well. Whether you're joining us for the first time or you're a longtime listener, I invite you to support our work by becoming an individual member, a business or community sponsor, or to suggest an idea for an upcoming program. You can do all those things and more at cityclubofueugene.org. Your support and encouragement make these community conversations possible. And of course, City Club is not just about conversation, it's about taking that conversation and translating it into action. And it's our hope that with informed understanding, you'll engage in the issues impacting our community, including today's subject, the forthcoming Oregon Legislative Session of 2024. With that, I'd like to thank Betsy Pownall and Sandra Bishop, the co-coordinators of today's program. Betsy will introduce our panelists.
Well, thank you, Andrew. My name is Betsy Pownall, City Club member. Today our program is the, oh, sorry, right, okay. I'm afraid to touch it. Can you hear me? Okay. Today our program is the 2024 Oregon Legislative Session preview. We're very honored to have 2 prominent Lane County elected leaders here to talk about what's coming up next in the Oregon Legislature. We have with us today Oregon Senator Floyd Przansky and Oregon Representative Charlie Conrad. Senator Przansky was first elected to the Oregon Legislature in 1994. He has been serving in the Oregon State Senate since 2003. He's an attorney, and during the interim, between sessions, he works as a municipal prosecutor. Senator Przansky serves on several legislative committees, including the Human Services and Natural Resources Committees. Most notably, he has been the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee for 10 years. Our second speaker today, Representative Charlie Conrad, was elected to the Oregon Legislature in 2022. The 2023 long session was his first experience in the Oregon Legislature. He serves on several committees, including Behavioral Health, House Judiciary and Emergency Management, and Veterans Committees. As a former Lane County Corrections Officer and Springfield Police Officer, Representative Conrad's recent appointment to the newly formed Juvenile Justice Policy Commission is no surprise. And congratulations are also in order, as Representative Conrad was recently appointed to the Joint Ways and Means Public Safety Subcommittee. We're so happy to have both speakers here with us today. After the presentation, there will be an opportunity for audience questions, which my colleague, Sandra Bishop, will moderate. With that, I would like to turn it over to Senator Przansky. Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for having myself and Charlie here today. I wanted to really kind of start off with kind of giving a framework of how the the Senate Judiciary Committee, as well as the legislative session, how it was going to unroll as to what you can expect. I think it's very important for everyone here to understand that the legislature has gone through a change as to how often we meet. Prior to 2012, the Oregon legislature met what we call regular legislative sessions every other year. We're one of about 6 or only 7 states that met every 2 years. At that time, we had no deadline as to getting our work completed. So I had the opportunity to serve in the 2 longest sessions, which went into August, and as I was taught in the very first session I was there, you do not want to be there after July 4th because people get very grumpy. So you can only imagine when we're there in the 2nd and 3rd week of August how grumpy people got. So since the voters approved having legislative sessions annually, that was in 2010, we then also we also added time deadlines for when we meet or how long we meet. So in the odd number of years, we have 160 days to do our work. In the short sessions, which is what's coming up now in the even number of years, we'll have 35 days to do the work that we need to do. When we asked the voters for that approval, it was because we saw a need to have the legislature meeting more than just every other year, because we budget for 2-year cycles. And as you can imagine, there's kind of a guesstimation as to how much revenue is coming in, how much is going out for different services. And so that was supposed to be and was one of the main frameworks for having meetings in the even number of years, and also why we limit it to only 35 days. At the same time, you have very few people that serve on the committees that would only be dealing with the budgets, and so the presiding officers back then decided that it was necessary and appropriate for each and every member to have some other input into the process and having policy bills recommended. Unfortunately, we're now seeing this becoming much more morphed as to wanting more and more. Fortunately, the presiding officers have in fact limited the number of bills that an individual can introduce. During the even number of years, we have a limitation of only 2 bills, personal bills, that we can introduce. The committees, at least on the Senate side, are limited to 3 bills. During the regular long session, there's no limit on the number of bills. And there are some of our colleagues that want to have that record in the Guinness World Book of Records of how many bills can they introduce. And unfortunately, that's really the wrong approach, because not only is it a waste of time, it's a waste of money, because it costs close to $1,000 for each and every bill to be processed and moved through that process. So the situation we find ourselves in now, we will be going into session on February 5th. We have 35 days, 7 days a week as how we count on the calendar. And so we have to be done by March 10th and out unless we, as the 2 chambers, decide that we need to have an additional 5 days, and it takes a super majority, 2/3 vote on each of the chambers to actually extend it. We've never, since we've gone into the annual sessions, had an extension of any of the sessions. Right now, I just got word that the Senate has 93 bills, 15 resolutions that were introduced. The House, 165 bills, 3 resolutions, and 1 memorial. And then I started looking and I said, wait a second, that's like more than 2 per person. Well, then I had to remember, oh yeah, the committees also got the bills to go in. So we have a lot of bills that are to be considered, but as you can imagine, with the time frame that I just mentioned, it's going to be very difficult for us to move stuff through. I'm going to share with you, kind of as the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, our work plan that we have set up for tackling the bills that have been given to us. This is kind of ironic. My committee is considered one of the super committees. We meet 4 days a week during the normal, regular, full, long session, and we also meet 4 days a week in the short session. But I only have 8 bills to be considered during this period of time. And normally, I would expect more, but that's what was assigned to our committee. On the House side, the Judiciary Committee has 22 bills, and they have half the time to meet than what I have, because the presiding officer on the House side, and they decided to only limit the judiciary to, like other policy committees, to only 2 days a week. And so I will have adequate time to get through the 8 bills we have. We will be hearing each and every one of those. If you go to the Oregon Legislative Information Service, we call it OLIS, online, and you can just Google it. You can find any of the committees, all of the bills that have been assigned to those committees. And if you're interested in any of the subject matter, you can actually sign up to have alerts given to you electronically, so when you know there's going to be some action on the bill. But to give you a time frame of what this really looks like, when we open up on February 5th, which is a Monday, we will have 1 week to have the bills in the place, or where the first chamber, where we call posting for work sessions. So within 1 week, the chairs and the committee needs to know what is going to be moving into the next phase, because the public hearing is just taking in information. To actually move the bill from a public hearing into a work session, it has to be done through the chair process, but then you have to actually take it up for a vote at that time. So within about 2-week period from the time we start, the bills have to be out of your committee to actually make this fast track. And so you can imagine that there will be a lot of people that will be very disappointed going into this process, because in some cases, I think on the House Judiciary, I do not see how they're going to be able to have public hearings on 22 bills in 2 meetings. So that's where some people start getting grumpy. So I hope that we will all understand that in the legislative process, less is better when it comes to the short session. So with that said, I wanted to go into how this will really impact us as to the committees will be shutting down. Most will be shut down by February 29th. And that's approximately, we'll leave about 10 days for bills to be voted out of the committees onto the floor to potentially be considered. So it's a very, very quick turnaround. Now, regarding bills that are coming forward, or topics that are going to be coming forward, I would just start off with where we are at this point. There's a committee that's been established to deal with a crisis that we have in this state, and it is a drug crisis. It is dealing with fentanyl. It's a national problem. It's not just here in Oregon, but unfortunately we've had the perfect storm. With ballot measure 110 being passed, with the fentanyl coming on as strong as it has in our state, everything has just reached a cluster to the point of where we've had many unintended consequences that we will need to be addressing. What the presiding officers did is they established the Joint Committee on Addiction and Community Safety Response. That committee, which I fortunately am a part of, is meeting on a monthly basis since October. And then the co-chairs is the Senate Majority Leader and the Judiciary Chair on the House side. And they've been meeting with a lot of groups as well as with their co-chairs to try to come up with some different options as to what the plan will be. Now you'll see, and that's already been established, there are some demarcations between what the majority party and the minority party thinks is the appropriate way to handle this, and you'll see, let's say, some conflict as that. With that said, what we are looking at doing is trying to honor what the voters passed, and at the same time take care of the unintended consequences that have occurred. And so you'll be seeing an area that will be focusing on public health, and specifically behavioral health, and also public safety and community safety. And those areas are still in works as to exactly what the final bill will be. When I say final bill, I should say introduced bill with multiple amendments that would be addressed, and that's what the co-chairs are working on now. The important part that I would give to you is that we realize that the voters, when they passed Measure 110, wanted to remove people who have addiction as an issue out of the criminal justice system and into a behavioral health and into a scenario that would in fact give them the opportunity to address those issues. Now, there's multiple ways of addressing that, and you will be hearing through this process of the short session different approaches that will be recommended, suggested, and then what will be passed. We will have an area that we need to ensure is that the unintended consequence of open use of drugs. That was not contemplated by the individuals that put the measure together. And I will have to take some responsibility because in 2021, the Senate Judiciary Committee was expanded to include the implementation of ballot measure 110. And I had a council that was dedicated to the session to work with the advocates and others that were working on measure 110 to bring forward a package because we needed to implement what the voters had passed. What we did not intend or did not consider and did not think about at the time that we should have was public use, open use of drugs. Many of you probably have followed what has happened up in Portland, and the scenario that has happened is one that is not a quality of life that we want in our communities, and we will be addressing that. What that does mean is that we're going to go back to some part of criminalizing possession of controlled substances. Now, one of the sticking points is how do we do that and what is the most effective? I have about 35 years now as a prosecutor in this state. The vast majority of it is doing municipal work, and so that means misdemeanor, which is what we're looking at as how these, the sanctions that will be. Then the question comes down to how do we actually implement what will be the best return and most efficient. So we're going to leave that, I'm going to leave that open for Q&A instead of going much more detail. What I wanted to do as well is just tell you that there's going to be a lot of other areas that will be worked on by the legislature. One of the areas that we worked on, and this is the other reason I think that you'll see some of the policy bills that you see in the short session, is because they've already been worked in the 23 session, the long session, but they just didn't make it across the finish line. So one of those bills is duty to repair. A right to repair. And this is basically dealing with components, electronics, products that you might be buying as a consumer. And the issue is that some of the manufacturers have proprietary secrets, as they call them. That really is just saying, you can send it to us, we'll fix it for you, and we'll charge you for it, as compared to providing you as a consumer the ability to do that on your own or take your product somewhere else and have it worked on. And so that got very close in 2023, but I expect that that will be one of the bills that will be a hallmark to allow for consumers to have much more control over their products, their purchases, and not being beckoned to the manufacturers and their whims and how they would basically have exclusive repair services that you would have no control over, and basically such as a cell phone. So those are some of the very, very high points that I wanted to bring forward. I am ready to answer many more questions if there are questions around the 110. Since this is an area, I will tell you that if you have not had the opportunity to be at the legislature, those 35 days will be action-packed. I would strongly ask you to consider going to the up to the Capitol. It is under construction, so you will not be able to get into many of the older parts where the seismic upgrade, we're now in, I think it's called the third tier of the upgrades, and we expect to have it in full operation, and the Capitol will be fully open for the 2025 session. But with that, I will sit down. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say Charlie. So Representative Conrad will speak next, and then we'll take questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Floyd. I appreciate that and appreciate the intro. So again, my name is Charlie Conrad. I represent House District 12, which is Eastern Lane County, and it touches all the way down to the Lane-Douglas line, just into Lynn County, all the way up to Oak Ridge, and it gets parts of the South Hills of Eugene as well. So very geographically large district and very diverse district as well. So I'm happy to represent that district and happy to represent them up in the legislature. You know, the committees that I'm on that were outlined, particularly behavioral health, healthcare, and judiciary, it touches everything that we're talking about with Measure 110. So I'll just touch on some of that real quick, and just as Floyd did, I'll leave the bulk of my comments to question and answers. Kind of want to hear what your questions are, what you're thinking about. To me, that's more important than me getting up here and telling you what's on my mind. So with that, I want to share with the Measure 110 side of things. There are some things that in terms of how to implement the common goals, and I would say that most of us in the legislature want it fixed. There are things that we need to do. So all the conversations that we're having are how to do it. What is the best way to actually achieve the best outcomes, both on the public safety side, but also for the folks that are struggling with addiction, for their friends, their families, for everything that they impact. We all want to help them. And so the conversations are, what is the best path going forward for that? So I look forward to hearing your questions and look forward to having more of those conversations as we get into that. So with that, one of the things that I want to touch on are just some of, at a high level, the healthcare side of things. The healthcare, I don't come from a healthcare background other than, my work in the police department, some other tangential work that I've done, but that really has become a focus of mine up at the legislature over the first year, particularly with youth substance use disorder and youth mental health. How can we actually help our youth at this point in time? My long-term view is, we have so many issues that we're talking about with housing, with homelessness, with, the economy, with everything that we've got. The way that we can prevent some of those problems in the future is let's work with our youth now. That's going to be one way that we can start mitigating some of those long-term issues, and why we still tackle the issues that we have with adults. But let's stop people from getting to that point in the first place. So that's kind of become the focus of where my interests are at and what I'm trying to work on and doing. So with that, there are a series of bills in the healthcare sector that really impact Eugene. One of them is Representative Nathanson's bill regarding fixes for the University District closure, the Peace Health closure. And, she has done a fabulous job with outreach, with bringing people around the table, and with really coming up with what I think are some positive solutions, some things that we can hopefully achieve. And I fully support, the work that she has done. Some of the things, for those of you who might not know, and I get questions about this from folks from time to time about what are we going to be able to do to help with that. And again, I'm on the Emergency Management Committee, and we just went through the ice storm, so I'm happy to answer any emergency management questions as well, because this also touches emergency management and that response. But some of what she has come up with is some bridge funding, a proposal so that, the time it takes now for Eugene Springfield Fire, where they could have gone to UDH, now they have to cross the river and go over to Springfield, and then they've got to come back. It takes time. So in order to do that, they've actually are going to, if they already haven't, put on another ambulance crew to be able to cover that so they can still continue to serve the district. So some funding to try and help that out for a little while. She's also put in money for an innovation fund. So some of the issues that we're trying to solve, how do we deliver healthcare services better to the people that need it? What innovative ways can we do it? Some of what we've seen throughout, it is, everybody going to the ER room and long ER waits. Not everybody needs the ER room. Some people can have medical care provided for them on the street, or in an urgent care, or in a different manner, and really keep the ERs for the folks that need the emergency room at that point in time. So an innovation fund looking at how can we deliver healthcare better and more efficiently for folks and try to alleviate some of the congestion that we get at some of these choke points. One of the other things that she's looking at is, just like most areas of our economy and in our sectors, we've got workforce issues. So one of the things that she's doing to try and tackle that is how can we eliminate or help it make it easier for nurses to come into the state and get their license quicker, to make it faster, to give them a temporary license. If you're in good standing and you have a license from another state, let's make it easy for you to come to Oregon. Let's give you a 90-day temporary license so that you can actually start practicing, so you can actually start treating patients. And to me, that's really one of the things that, that take a step forward to start solving some of the workforce issues and delivering services. And then she's also got another aspect to her bill. There are 4 aspects to it, but really looking at the administrative side. How can we eliminate some of these administrative burdens? How can we actually bill differently and do things differently at different levels in our healthcare system to, again, deliver services to people when they need it and where they need it and what's convenient for them. So I'm excited about her bill. I'm looking forward to having those conversations and seeing if we can actually get that to pass. One of the other bills that I'm going to talk about, and all these bills, they're system changes to the healthcare system itself. And so each one of these are components, but when you put them all together, it's really trying to come up with a better and more efficient healthcare system for that delivery of services for the people that live in the state. The other one that I'm excited about, I supported it last time. It didn't go through for a couple different reasons, but it's the Health Insurance Mandate Review Committee. HIMARC is the acronym, because everybody loves acronyms. And what that is, it is, and this is a pilot project being proposed by Representative Pham from Portland. It is a neutral body that will provide economic information to us on the committee about who the ultimate payer is for the decisions that we make. So last year in the healthcare committee, we had a number of bills come to us to look at mandating health insurance companies covering certain things. One of them were hemophilia medications, some other high-cost medications. And for us to evaluate that, for me, again, not coming from healthcare, not being an economist, who's the ultimate payer? Who is ultimately going to pay the cost for some of these medications? Hemophilia medications are very expensive, and if you have 2 children with hemophilia, you need those meds at your home all the time. You can't wait and go, to the pharmacy a couple hours later. You need the medications there all the time. You have to have them ready. So who's going to be that ultimate payer? Is it going to be everybody? Is it just going to be those folks with high deductibles? And that's what this body would do, is help us with that economic information so that we can look at how is this going to impact everybody else's insurance policy? Who is the ultimate payer going to be? So we can weigh those values. So we can weigh the cost of that policy with the cost of people's pocketbooks. What makes sense? So that's why I'm excited about it, because it's information and it's data, and it helps us make better informed decisions. One of the other ones, similar to what Rep. Nathanson has, it's nurse licensure. Again, trying to get nurses from out of state that are in good standing to be able to come into Oregon and practice sooner and not be delayed by going through the OHA or the Board of Licensing, which has significant delays. I've received calls and emails from folks that have waited 3, 4, 5 months to be able to practice in Oregon when they're in good standing. Why should a nurse practitioner in good standing with a license and decades of experience be sitting at home twiddling their thumbs, ready to go to work and not treating a patient because administratively we're trying to get the license done? One of the other things that we talked about last time as well, that we'll continue the conversation, for all those folks that love healthcare, it's pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs for short. And they are a complex part of our economy and our healthcare system. We passed some legislation last year to try and rein in some of their practices, which have been causing our local pharmacies to go out of business. This last year in 23, we had 36 local independent pharmacies go out of business. Every year we lose our local independent pharmacies. And really one of the impacts that that has, particularly in our rural communities, is now it concentrates the remaining patients into other pharmacies. And those pharmacies are struggling because the pharmacies don't have a high margin. They have a high margin on a couple pills, a couple medications that they deliver, but for the most part, some of the prescriptions that they deliver, they lose money. And so it's trying to balance that economic part and protecting our local rural pharmacies so people can have access to what they need, to their medications they need, and not have to drive 2 or 3 hours to the next pharmacy because their local one has closed down. So we're going to be looking at that and talking about more pharmacy benefit manager regulations. This bill, again, this is coming from Representative Goodwin, who's had a number of pharmacies close, and Representative Nathanson. They both worked on it last year as well, and will be looking for transparency and accountability for pharmacy benefit managers. So again, we can get more information and really understand the impact of pharmacy benefit managers in the healthcare sector. And there's some other things, one of the other bills in the healthcare sector, it's looking at community health programs, and it's coming from Representative Nose, and I'm going to sign on to it. It is looking at, so community health programs in our area, they do everything with community and behavioral health. They are integral to delivering of services. And so what this is doing, it is establishing a task force to look at how we can streamline and make them more efficient, and to help fund them so they can actually deliver services to the community and people in the community that need it. So I'm excited about that one because that's a government efficiency. Let's support an efficient government that have agencies that spend our money wisely and services get delivered to the people that need it up front. And with that, one of the other ones, a system one that I'm excited to hear where the conversation goes, is coming from Representative Graber, who is a firefighter up outside of Portland for Tualatin Valley. And she is proposing a bill called the Emergency Management System Modernization Bill. And she's, again, looking at how can paramedics, how can ambulances deliver services to patients that need it and where they need it. So it's looking at where they go. Are they going to hospitals? Are they going to urgent cares? Where can they actually transfer people with the ultimate goal of delivering people to a medical provider at the time they need it and where they need it, and looking at modernizing that system. And if you're interested in that, she presented that to the Healthcare Committee this last legislative days. She did a great job outlining all the things that she has in that. So if you're interested, let me know. And it's up on all, so you can watch that hearing. A couple other quick things before we open up for a Q&A. The 2 bills that I've got going, because again, in the House we have 2 bills, and each of our committees had 3 bills. The 2 bills that I have, one of them, there was a Supreme Court case, Tyler versus Hennepin, which stated that counties can't keep when they foreclose on a tax property, when they foreclose on a property due to delinquent taxes, they can't keep that overage. So if they sell it for above market value and above what they were due, they can't keep that. And so this puts in guidelines and adheres to this Supreme Court case, Tyler versus Hennepin, on how we're going to do that. So I'm working with the Association of Oregon Counties and some other groups to try and craft what that's going to look like. We've got the first bill, but we're already working on the amendment, because when we go before the committee, again, hopefully I get before the committee and be judiciary, so I'm one of those 22 bills, that we can actually have the amendment ready, we can go and we can get it flushed through, because the counties need it, property owners in Oregon need it. This is something that we need in order to comply with that Supreme Court case. The other one that I've got going, so I actually have two going before judiciary, so I've got my fingers double crossed. It's the same one that I introduced last year. It is with my experience with animals and animal neglect cases when I supervised Lane County Animal Services for a period of time, and my wife is a farrier. She's been involved in horse rescues for quite some time and still volunteers her time at a lot of them. It is looking at animal neglect laws and actually increasing the penalties so that, you know, folks that might starve a horse to death or an animal to death, it actually makes it a felony. And the purpose of that is so that we can actually get them into the system and hopefully get them the mental health, hopefully get what they need, because a lot of these folks are hoarders. Not everybody, but I want to be able to give the judges the ability to sentence people and to help people get the treatment that they need. It shouldn't be a misdemeanor. We need to have something relevant. It takes a long time to starve an animal to death or neglect it to where it's got severe malnourishment. So it is looking at that. It does a number of other things in there. There's some elements, a lot of times in these cases, it does not touch any commercial or agricultural at all. Anything regulated by the USDA. It doesn't touch anything along those lines. And some of the other aspects, when we have people that do this, a lot of times they have many horses, many animals. I always go to horses because that's the experience that I've got for the most part. But they get people to help them. They have people enable them. And so as soon as they get wind that animal control or somebody's going to come out and look and evaluate the horses or might seize them, and in Lane County this happens unfortunately quite a bit, they get their friends and their neighbors to come haul the horses away and hide them. We can't have that. We need to be able to look at the welfare of the animals, and hiding that and delaying any investigation, anything for those, doesn't do anything to help out the situation. So looking at creating a crime of enabling, which is just going to be a misdemeanor, so that we've got some recourse to help out those investigations and make them efficient. And then one of the other things that we run into in this world a lot is that people that are convicted of these crimes, a lot of times, they will then move on to properties but still have horses, still have the animals that they were convicted of, but now they're not theirs. They're their friends, they're their spouses, they're somebody else's. And really functionally they're theirs. Horses don't have VIN numbers. We can't trace who the registered owner is. And so this prohibits people from living on the property if they've been convicted of it as well. Because again, we want people to get the help that they need. If they're hoarding, if they have some other issues, let's get them the help they need. And living on the properties with the same animals that they were convicted of criminally neglecting doesn't do anybody any good. So those are some of the big ones, some of the highlights. Again, we've got a lot of bills coming before us, but for that, I will open it up. I will step away and get ready for question and answers at this period of time, so I look forward to seeing what's on your guys' mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Conrad and Senator Przanski. We'll begin question and answer in just a moment, but first I'd like to thank the businesses and in-kind sponsors whose support helps make City Club possible. Thank you to our gold sponsors, Network Charter School, Hirschner Hunter LLC, and Evans Elder Brown and Subert. Thank you also to our in-kind sponsors, KRVM 91.9 Radio, Alpha IT, Dotson's Photography, and Kid Sports. Also, a special thank you to radio station KLCC FM 89.7 for airing City Club programs Monday nights at 7 p.m. For those listening at home or in the car right now, your household is one of several thousand tuning into City Club on KLCC, and we love that you are here. You can also find all recent City Club programs archived on KLCC as well as on our YouTube channel and as podcasts. We'll take a brief break before returning for question and answers. Thank you. Grab your seats, unless you have a question for the representative or the senator, in which case, please line up here and we'll take as many as time allows. Welcome back to the City Club of Eugene and our program on the 2024 Oregon Legislative Session. I'm now handing the podium over to today's program co-coordinator, Sandra Bishop, who will moderate our Q&A.
Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Sandra Bishop here, former City Club member and a member for so long I can't remember when the club formed. Welcome to City Club. There's a lot of places you could be today, and I'm so glad to see so many of you here interested in the legislative process. So our speakers today are Oregon Senator Floyd Prozanski and Oregon Representative Charlie Conrad, just for people who may have just tuned in when this is rebroadcast. So as part of the Q&A today, try to keep your questions short. There's a lot of people with a lot of questions. And if you have a question for one or the other of them, say that. Otherwise, they can both answer or decide. And take no more than 1 minute to set up your question, please. So we also are taking questions online. So we had a question that came in that I'm going to kick it off with, and that is that there's wildfire funding under discussion. There are several proposals that are out there. One of them is from Senator Golden, and this is a proposal for how to get more funding into firefighting for the wildfires. And his proposal also includes restoring the timber severance tax. So would one of you like to answer whether or not you'll be supporting that proposal or not?
Thank you for that question. I mean, that certainly is something that's out there. I have not read his proposal. I've heard about it, had some conversations about it, and it's something that I'm opening to considering. What's important to me is how the numbers behind it, and what do we get for the bang for the buck, and how does that, is it compounded with currently what we have, or is it something in lieu of? When I look at taxes, it is always nexus and proportionality to me. Who's deriving the benefit and how much are they paying? And so that's the lens by which I'll be looking at evaluating that. And certainly when I see the proposal, when we have words on the page, reaching out to all the parties involved to see, does that make sense? Is that actually going to achieve what we want it to? And is that something that's going to achieve what we want to for that long term as well, and just not in the short term?
Thank you for the question. There are actually three funding bills that are proposed that I know of. The one that we just heard from Senator Golden, also one by Rep. Evans and one by Senator Steiner. Senator Steiner actually put a group together, and they came up with a plan that I now understand that the actual bill that was introduced does not have it, but one of them they were thinking about was having every property owner pay $10 into a fund to fight fires. That got a lot of pushback, and so she's pulled that out. So all of these things are works in action. I am at this point supporting Senator Golden's proposal. This is one that is built on Representative Hovey, who's been working on this issue for, I want to say, 6 to 12 years and trying to come together and really do a balance. And I agree with Charlie that we need to look at the numbers, but I think once you see the numbers as to how much is actually being paid by the timber industry as to what is the cost on the insurance that we pay, it's time for an adjustment, and I think the numbers will show that it's appropriate to go with the proposal that Senator Golden has.
Thank you. I'd like to go to our in-live audience. First question. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kellyanne Stiles, and I'm the mother of a victim of sex trafficking. And so my question is, will you please, with everything you're already doing, it's great, I appreciate everything you're doing, but can you please add some extra services, wraparound services especially, and what you're doing in the legislation for survivors of sex trafficking, especially there's already a lot going on for the youth. but especially for when they're homeless, when they try to escape, and for those who are single parents like my daughter was. It made it harder for her to escape and everything. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, is to try to get more help for current survivors and help prevent more sex trafficking of all ages. And when you talk about the homeless and the mentally ill and the
Can we
Sorry.
have,
Thank you.
have them give their?
All right, I don't know if that really was a question, it's more as an ask, and I will just say that the Judiciary Committees, both House and Senate, have been very astute to this issue, have been working, will continue to work. This is an area that we do need to put more and more time and efficiency, and as the questioner asked, to make certain that we have services that are wraparound that actually does, in fact, provide those services that are needed for that individual. And not each and every victim of these type of crimes have different needs, and so you need to have a menu of opportunities to actually help those individuals transition through that tragedy.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm glad you brought that up. And that is something that as we go forward and as I get a chance to advocate for funding, advocate for whether it's capital funding for facilities to do it, advocating for the workforce to be able to help them out, or as Senator Brzezinski talked about, it's those wraparound services. And it's not just for the person themselves, it's their support system. It's the people around them, whether they might have children, whether they have families, who that is. And so I'm a strong advocate for that. There are some programs that I've learned about recently throughout the state, and if I can advocate for funding for them to keep them up and going and or let them expand their services. Our behavioral health system throughout the state is horrid. We are bottom in the nation for delivery of services, and we're one of the top in the nation for mental health and substance use disorder. We have done a horrible job, and it's been decades of lack of investment. And this is the time that we need to actually do something different and start closing those gaps and being the highest in the services and lowest for the addiction and mental health. So thank you for that, and yes, I will do everything I can to advocate and keep those programs in mind.
Thank you. Our next questioner, Jerry.
Jerry Smith, City Club member, a retired, longtime public welfare and health worker. This is kind of odd, but I'm hoping that a resolution's easier to get through than a bill, because I think the state needs to be screaming to the federal government to restore all the health and welfare programs that we have were based on federal funding originally, sometimes 90%, sometimes 75%, and it's all gone. And for the state or our local charitable community to try to carry on the work, we're failing tremendously in homelessness, mental illness. I volunteer downtown.
Jerry, do you have a question?
I'm finishing, yeah.
Okay.
Twice a week, and I just see these people who have no idea where to go or how to get help.
One of the things that we could use Jerry's very astute observation for is as a segue into what is going to happen with the housing package for this session. But Charlie, did you want to say something before we go to housing?
Yeah, I just wanted to address that, and thank you for that, and thank you for volunteering. One of the other things that I've been fortunate to be involved with, came out of Senate Bill 606 last year, and it's the Task Force on Modernizing Contracts and Grants for Nonprofits. And our state is highly reliable and needed to have nonprofits. And we use them because we want them to be able to deliver the same services that the government would otherwise be responsible for, but at a cheaper price. But in doing that, we need to make sure that we can actually do that we support them, and any chance we get to support them with less administrative burden so they can actually deliver services and actually pay their employees that are certified, that can deliver those services to our community members. Absolutely. So for that, we'll continue to work on that, and I agree, we need some system changes, but it's just going to take a while. But at the state level, there are some things that we can do, and hopefully we'll get there.
Should we go to the next question, come back to housing? Okay, go ahead.
Senator, Representative, thank you both for your service to our state. You guys both mentioned bills being considered now that maybe didn't make it across the finish line last year. Could you talk a little bit about a percentage of like revisits to new bills that are in the session, and if it's more likely that a bill that got considered last time but didn't make it through is more likely to get through this time. I would love to hear about that.
I'll touch on that real quick, and then Senator Brzezinski, he's got more experience. So what my animal neglect bill didn't make it through last time because I had a part that sent it to Ways and Means, and it didn't make it out of Ways and Means. So I took that money ask out of it and just went with the policy. So the experience that I've had with a lot of the representatives that are redoing bills this time, there was a hiccup, and so they went through, if there was opposition, they went through and they had, through the interim, they had work groups. They met, they've tried to resolve the opposition. So there's a higher likelihood for most of the bills that didn't make it through last time that they'll go through this time. Again, not 100%, but it's a higher likelihood because they've had a chance to work on through some of the issues.
I would agree with Charlie. I think the majority of bills that we see probably in the short session probably have had an introduction previously. And usually it's the one that just came off of because it's hot and everyone still wants to work forward. The right to repair that I mentioned earlier, that's one of the bills that forward. The two bills that I had drafted, and I only introduced one of those two, but both of those were bills that have been previously in the legislature. Sometimes it takes more than just one long session to actually get something done. So the one that I had filed this time is on wage theft. And that's basically ensuring that those individuals that are the on-the-line workers are not going to get stiffed and not get their salary, where a general contractor hires a sub and the sub takes the money and runs, that there would be some obligation on the general to actually have due diligence of who they hire to do the sub work and make certain that those individuals are getting paid that are actually out there performing the jobs.
Thank you. Go ahead, Tom.
Tom Bowerman, City Club member. I'm really pleased to see you two together. I admire you both. One is very new to the legislature. One's one of the oldest hands in the legislature, which leads to my question. As you fresh look and established look, we the people have witnessed some real policy struggles in the last several sessions, and walkouts, stalemates. What do you think, if you could choose one thing, the most important game changer policy to adopt or to enact in some way that would facilitate the operation of policy making in the legislature?
Well, that's a big question, Tom. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's
Being the old hat.
You must dream, though, right?
So it is interesting. I am the longest serving legislator in Oregon at this point. My first 7 years was in the minority. And I was taught in that time, it was a very collegial setting. We had Democrats and Republicans working together, duking it out in committee or on the floor, but afterwards getting together and not having it become personalized. So I can't legislate not making stuff personal, but that is one of the areas, because what we know is Charlie and I have worked together on a few things since he's come in. If you sit down and talk, you may have differences, but the reality, you probably have more commonality than you think. And so we can, in fact, work together. And it's one of those things that a bill that we pass is a living document. And what I mean by that is that you take it, you work it, you move forward, and if it doesn't hit the mark, you come back and make modifications. We can't get everything perfect the first time. So I hope that we can do that. And the other part, we'll see what's going to happen. As most people know, the voters passed Measure 113. It's in the courts right now, and that is going to determine whether or not individuals who have in fact walked out are going to be able to return for another session, or are they not going to be able to join us. So I really do hope that we get to a point where we were in the past of having much more cooperation, working together, because we are there to serve the people. And I will just say that my very first session, I had 5 different mentors. 3 were Democrats and 2 were Republicans. I was fresh, I was new, I had wet behind the ears, and those 2 Republicans, one was the Senate Chair of Judiciary and the House Chair, they stopped whatever they were doing when I walked to their door and said, help. And they helped me. They said, you leave your partisan stripes at the door when you come in here for session. You work with the other 89 people. You do the best you can representing your constituents, but think about the state as a whole. I wish and I hope that we can get back to that.
Thank you. I think we're going to go to the next question. We have quite a few people chomping at the bit here for questions. So thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you for your service.
My name's Patty Zachary. I'm new here, so I'm not sure if this is the place to ask the question, but since you brought up the ice storm and talked about fires with the ice storm, so many power poles dropped in Springfield, and with all the fires, I'm wondering if there's any conversation anywhere about putting power lines under the ground for this state.
I appreciate that. Absolutely. There are conversations. So I live out in Dexter, and EPED is my provider. And when I have conversations with them, and they've done a great job in doing that, and the storm hit everybody, hit all the providers. But the back of the envelope number that I was given is $1 million a mile to bury that. And so if we are going to do that, it's going to be very, very expensive. So if that gets rolled out and it gets financed by whatever mechanism we want to finance it, we need to be very strategic and hit those high areas, hit those areas that otherwise don't have another way to protect those lines. And that also means, we need to look at right-of-ways and make sure that we are helping our utilities to be able to trim back the trees, to be able to reduce the hazards, and it might be more cost-effective. And then when there's no other option, okay, then let's spend that money to go ahead and start burying those lines where it makes sense. But it's going to have to be a strategic approach.
I'm going to springboard off of that and just what you just said. Sub, which is the provider for Springfield Utilities Electric, in the last ice storm, they had 6 poles that went down. 6. This time, 80. So it is a war zone in the sense of when you get out to East Springfield, which is now part of the district I represent in the Thurston area. We need to be looking at other things. But I think the real issue that we have, that we're going into this session, what, if anything, can we as the state do to help those individuals that have been impacted by this storm and actually have some resources available? I've got some plans or thoughts that I'm trying to get in with the governor to see if she would be encouraging to move forward about maybe setting up some reserve funds that we can actually utilize to help people. Because this is what I didn't know. You have a tree that goes down, that's a 120-foot tree. It goes across your property, knocks out your 2 fences. And then you call your insurance company. My understanding, the insurance company will clear the tree to fix the fence, but that big log that's in the middle of your yard is for you to take care of. Mm-hmm. There are many, many individuals in this community that will not be able to do that. And so we need to look at how we as a state work to help each other, and this is one of the areas I think we can.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Kitty Piercy. Hi. Nice to have you both here. My question has to do with the recent ice storm too. A little different, and I just want your take. If you recall Katrina years ago, no plans were made for the elderly, and a lot of them suffered terribly during that. And I sort of feel like we're still in that place in Oregon about what happens to homeless people or unhoused people during occurrences like this, and how do we address that, and you could say it's a local issue, but I think it's a local and a state and a federal issue. I think we need to prepare for everybody because they're all our citizens.
Kitty, thank you for the question. And you're right, and we are learning as we go, and there is a lot of work that needs to be done. I've had the opportunity, Charlie may have had some other contacts with some of the emergency service providers. I do understand that there were some outreach that did occur for those who have been working the streets as to helping to get people. But what we don't have is a designated area or means that people know where you can go in a scenario, because you lose power, you can't get communications, you use internet. I mean, a lot of people lost power, they may have had internet or vice versa. And so there is a need for, I think, each and every community to have an action plan. And with Charlie, this is an area that he has for emergency response. And yeah, there's a lot more we can do and a lot more we have to do.
Thank you very much for that question. I appreciate that. And I've had a lot of conversations over the last week, a lot of thoughts, and I can go on for about 4 hours, but I'll try to keep it down to about a minute and a half. This really isn't the message that I'm really trying to pass on and that I'm hearing from other communities. It is a local issue, because particularly what this storm really showed is how even regionally, localized the intensity can vary. So out in Dexter, I had ice. I had no snow. I had an inch of ice on my trees. Not nearly what East Springfield had, not nearly what Cresswell and Cottage Grove has had. And when you have a substation that goes out that gets damaged like that happened in Cresswell, it really changes the dynamics of what you can do. The same reason why you can't leave your house is the same reason why emergency responder can't get to you. So how are you going to help your neighbors? How are we as a communities going to be able to get food? It's one thing to be out of power for 2 days. Most people can store water for 2 days, fill up your milk jugs, do all the things that you need to do, have all the candles, have your flashlights ready to go, a little bit of non-perishable food. We were eating cans of chili and soup and getting creative with what we had in our cupboards. But when you get to 4, 5, 6 days, what are you going to do? Cottage Grove was running into the issue where their generators were running out of fuel. They were risking having sewage back up into homes. They had to be able to get fortunately they had a 250-gallon tank that they're able to fill and refill the generator so they could keep the sewage flowing. Once you get to 4, 5, and 6 days, as system-wise, infrastructure-wise, you start to get into some significant issues that don't happen at 2 and 3 days. So as a state, that planning, we need to make sure that we've got funding through our Spire grants or through our other grants. So we got generators, but you need fuel, and we need people to be able to deliver that fuel. Cottage Grove, I was down there all day yesterday talking about this, and they came together and they had somebody deliver firewood. They brought their community together and they started handing out firewood for folks. So it is a community response, but the preparation needs to happen at that state level to ensure that that community has those resources that they need through resiliency hubs, through tanks, water tanks, fuel tanks, whatever it is, but it's got to be that conversation. And we can do it going forward, and I plan on having that and delivering that message whenever I can.
Only thing I would add.
Okay, we're really running out of time.
Okay, I
I'm
just want
sorry.
to say, keep everybody in mind. I mean, everybody.
And we have time for one more question, if it's a quick one.
It's a follow-up from the audience to what we were just talking about, many of these extreme weather events being fueled, at least in part, potentially by climate change. So are there climate resilience or climate action items that are on the agenda for the short session? Thanks.
That's not a quick question, but you need to give a quick answer. It's yes or no.
But my quick answer is I don't know of anything that will address that in the immediate future.
Yeah, I'm not sure all the bills that have been filed, if there's one there, but the climate resilience has been an area that we've been working on. I'm not sure if anything has been dropped for the 2024 session.
Thank you very much. I'd like to turn it back to Andrew, who's going to do our wrap-up. Thank you.
That is, in fact, all the time we have for questions today, although we do want to hear about housing. So maybe stick around afterwards and you can ask these guys about housing. Please join me in thanking our panelists. This has been our January 26th conversation at the City Club of Eugene. A reminder, if you're a resident of the City of Eugene or Lane County at large and you're interested in contributing to our city's legislation, you have the opportunity to join City Council advisory bodies and committees. The applications for this year are due on February 4th, and more information can be found at eugene-or.gov under boards and commissions. It's a great way for folks to serve, and the city and the county really need you, so check that out. Next Friday, City Club will be back on the road, this time at the Midtown Arts Center, for a conversation on the arts economy of Eugene. We'll have the opportunity to hear from Kelly Johnson, the Executive Director of Arts and Business Alliance of Eugene, who's in the room with us right now. Awesome. Thanks, Kelly. Josh Nichols, the Executive Director of the Eugene Ballet, and Kerry Westland, the President and CEO of Travel Lane County. So please do bring your tap shoes, bring your tutus, bring your barbershop quartets, whatever you have, bring them next week, because this one will be fun. Have a wonderful weekend. See you soon.